Good afternoon, good morning, maybe good evening to all our guests joining us from around the world, joining us here, in a very different studio to what some of you are used to, because we don't have Professor Alan Barrell here today. I'm joined by my co-host, good friend and business partner, Mr. Nick Luby, who is standing in for Professor Alan Barrell. Nick, this is exciting. We're here. We've got a great guest joining us in a very short while, but it's great to be back on the screen with you, my friend.
Very good news, my friend. I've got big shoes to fill. Hopefully, lovely audience, you won't be disappointed. Very, very different from Professor Alan Barrell and his vast experience and knowledge, but I know a thing or two. So yeah, really looking forward to enlightening conversations, my friend.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great fun. As I say, we've got an exciting guest joining us, and we're going to be talking about strategy and leadership, something that's very close to both of our hearts. Nick, we get involved ourselves with working with small groups, much larger organizations, helping them thinking about leadership, communication. And this is going to be, something useful, because I think we're going to learn a thing or two today.
Always learning. That's why I love events and opportunities to get online with lovely audiences. Always something to learn. And if anything is true, mate, the world is shifting. Everything's changing. Business is changing. The environment is changing. Geopolitically, it's all changing. So strategy, no doubt, will shift. And leadership is under great pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that are joining us, maybe it's your first time here, stick with us. We're here for about 45 minutes where we're going to be having open conversation, live and unscripted, as we like to call it, that Nick and I have been doing for many years, engaging with audiences from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life, about their journeys, about the ups, the downs, the challenges and the successes. And if you want to get involved, you can use that chat. You can pop in there a comment for Nick or I, of course, more importantly, our guest that's joining us. And we'll do our best to pick up and answer any of those questions. We encourage you to be involved and interact. Makes it much more engaging and fun for everybody. But I suppose without further ado, Nick, I think we should welcome our guest into the studio today and learn a little bit more about them, their journey, and maybe pick up on some of those tips and techniques and skills that they can share with us and our audience today. So please give a very warm welcome to our very, very special guest, Lucy Colson. Good morning, good afternoon, Lucy.
Good afternoon. It is just the afternoon by 3 minutes, isn't it?
Indeed. For us anyway, because I know we have friends that would join us all the way across Europe, in Latvia, as far as China, the Middle East. So we do have a real mix of people joining us here, watching. And of course, they might be popping and watching this on catch-up TV at a later date as well. So Lucy, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Great to meet you, and looking very forward to this conversation. But for our audience's benefit, tell us a little bit more about Lucy, where you are, what you do, and what inspires you.
Oh, nice question at the end. So my name is Lucy. I'm based out of Cambridge and London, and I'm a business strategist focusing in strategy and leadership. So at the moment, specialised in go-to-market strategy, so marketing, sales, customer experience, all rolled into one, also known as RevOps or revenue operations, and value creation and organization planning, which sounds boring, but it's basically about who your team is, how that team is structured, how you communicate within that team, and the alike. So very important for the success of a business, and specializing with startups in kind of the smaller range, but typically up to about 50 employees. So healthy startups, healthy scale-ups as well on that smaller end. And yeah, that's basically the main focus of what I do. In terms of what inspires me, it's a good question. For me, a big thing that drives the work that I do is autonomy and fulfillment, and what the impact is and the value created by the businesses. For me, business is not just purely about profit, although it is a profit-making enterprise. It is about the purpose and the people to do within that business and also around that business. So employees, as well as suppliers, as well as your customers, and even the families and the communities around your business as well. It's all things which need to be taken into account from a strategy and, more importantly, a leadership position.
So there's so much to talk about already, Lucy. Brilliant. brilliant. A whistle-stop tour of where you're coming from. Hello to Elmars, already tuning in and hopefully enjoying the show so far. First thing, let's address the elephant in the room, Lucy. Right, I'm an old bloke, and I know a few things I've picked up along the way. You have youth on your side, and first question, okay, youth versus experience. How on earth have you got all this experience, all this knowledge to share with startups and beyond at such a young age? How did that happen?
It's two things combined into one. It is some early choices as well as a little bit of luck, as with all of these things in business. So I started in business when I was very young anyway. I started when I was 20 years old. I didn't go to university. It was about middle of COVID, I set up my first company, and that was an e-commerce brand. And so immediately from there, you already are thrown into the deep end on strategy and leadership and planning and general business operations. And it was doing it by myself as well. So I was everything and everyone within that business, which immediately just gives you a wealth of experience. That company ultimately did fail, and I make no secrets of that. I think as a 20-year-old, to expect, anything more than failure or learning, shall I say, is an unrealistic expectation. And that's what I mean. That was the experience, the learning that I took there. I then moved into my next business, which focused on marketing and marketing consultancy, marketing execution. And out of curiosity, I then went into strategy of that and specializing in that. And I was very fortunate, and this is the luck part, to have some pretty big clients pretty early on. And just the experience there and being surrounded by some really incredible people at those startups as well. They were the ones who were able to teach me from perhaps a greater level of experience that I was kind of able to borrow and steal and kind of bring into my own ecosystem, which was a lot of fun. So yes, young, and I don't make any claims to be any older or more experienced than I am, but just purely starting young and the luck of having some really good first clients as well meant that I've been able to kind of balance those two out.
Yeah, amazing, Lucy. There's so much we can unravel here. And firstly, like yourself, I started very young. I didn't go on to university. I'm not, by the way, for those that are joining from university, you're on the right path. Everyone has a different path, a different journey to take. So if you are at university and then you're going to go on to work for somebody, start your own business, that's your journey, that's your path. But you, Lucy, and I decided that wasn't for me. I wanted to start one of my first businesses. And like you, I've seen lots of ups and downs. And I really take my hat off to you to, sit there and be totally honest and upfront and say, look, I had a business. I was 20 years old. It was an e-commerce business and it wasn't successful. It hit a wall. And maybe we can unpick that, to take some of those learnings out, which might be useful for others. But feel free to say, no, David, I don't want to go and re-experience that. I've been there once. But that's what life's about. Life is about learning. And I think if, you're not coming across mistakes and, or making mistakes and things are not always going your way, you're not going to learn. You're not going to gain that knowledge and that experience. So it's important that we learn from our failures. So can I, and I say, tell me to go away. But what that e-commerce business, firstly, what did it do? What was it selling online? And what was the challenges that you faced? As you said, you wore the various hats, you was everything. So what was the challenges you saw there? I know others experience exactly this.
So the company itself, as I said, was an e-commerce brand, and it was guided journals. So a very saturated space, which is one thing to take into account. The second thing was that it was focused on how to live a more fulfilling life, really focused on life planning and ironically almost like a life strategy, and pulled an awful lot from psychology. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the self-determination theory, but it's this idea of if you have a direction, a plan to achieve that direction and confidence to action that plan, then you can live a very fulfilling life. It's the main concept of that idea in a nutshell. And so the 3 journals were based around those 3 ideas. And what's really annoying is that there is another company who was like kind of the incumbent in the space, who a few years ago after my company failed had come out with a journal, which was basically trying to do what I was trying to do and was very successful. So that said to me later on down the line, oh, the idea was really good and the idea was there. It was actually in the execution where it failed. And to answer your question, what was the actual challenge? The main thing for me was actually putting myself and my idea out there. As a young entrepreneur, even just as a beginning entrepreneur, it's very easy to get your ego and your identity wrapped up into your business and wrapped up into your idea. And so when you are putting your product out there, it very much feels like you're putting yourself out there. And so when you get rejection on your product, your service, your idea, actually it's a rejection of you. And through an awful lot of work and processing, then it's become a case of, okay, I recognize what was going on here. Now I realize I need to separate those two ideas, and that you are not your business and all of those other things. And it's very easy to fall into when you're a solo entrepreneur and you're the only person in your team as well. So yeah, the separation of those two ideas is critical, because as you say, nowadays with marketing, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to be creating content. You've got to be pushing. And if you're not pushing as hard as you can, your competitors will be. And it's that idea. It's a case of what that's almost the trade-off you have to understand. You have to learn how to balance that in what you're comfortable with the needs of the business. And yeah, it's a balance I'm still learning.
We're all still learning. I'd like to think we're all still learning, because I guess because there's so much change everywhere. God, the world's so much different now than when I started my first business. And actually, it's different. Everything's different now after the pandemic. So there's so much shift and change that hopefully we are all benefiting from conversations like this and learning all the time. And I was drawn by your commentary around the importance of separating yourself from your business. Not a very easy thing to do, especially if you're doing everything within the business. And a lot of businesses are based on personal brand, and you put your everything into it. But ultimately, there's the business, and then there's you. And it's very difficult. I found certainly very difficult to separate those two things. But really lends itself towards the branding and that kind of the narrative development that I know is a particular skill of yours. But before we go into branding and narrative and what stories that the businesses kind of need to tell, a business that fails, certainly young, creates a certain amount of resilience and need courage to bounce back from that. So anyone listening out there who's either got a young business or just about to start, courage and resilience, please. Write those down in big letters. You're going to need a lot of that. What was the big thing you learned, Lucy, from that whole experience? What's the one big takeaway that you can share with our lovely audience?
No plan goes to plan, so plan for everything to go wrong. So
can you just say that? Can you say that again? Because that's quote worthy.
No plan goes to plan, and it is a good strategy principle as well, because when you're making a strategy, when you're creating a plan, it's important to understand that you're in a changing market. There's an economic term, ceteris paribus, which basically means everything being equal. That's not how the world works. The world is constantly changing around you, around your business. Your business is constantly changing. And so there is going to be things which you can't anticipate. And knowing that it's about flexibility and adaptation as much as it is doing the best thing that you know to do, again, there's an element of balance which is required there, and finesse. Very paradoxical. Strategy and leadership, excellence in strategy and leadership, I find is very paradoxical. And finding a balance between conflicting and conflating trade-offs is one of the core skills at the center of it.
Yeah, it's very interesting from one Lucy to another. Lucy Wheeler, thank you for your comments here, coming via LinkedIn. It's so hard to separate brand personal, especially when you want that personalized approach. And that's so true, isn't it? As a small business, and again, Lucy, you're working with small businesses, helping them to scale or to start up and then to scale. what is your advice? Not only from your own personal perspective, but you're working with these startups, you're working with these scale-ups, people by people. That is something I totally believe in. You can come up with the best brand in the world, but if that brand is not human, if people don't know who's behind it, is that a good approach? Some businesses will build it on, we've got a great product. You don't need to know who's behind it. Other businesses will build it on, I've got a great product and I'm the front of the business, so they will be the person promoting it, talking about it, selling it. They will be wearing multiple hats and stuff like that. What's your opinion around that? Be at the front, at the forefront, or keep out the way?
There's so many different points. I've kind of got 4 or 5 points which are just written down here. So first things first, yes, people buy from people. So an element of a personal brand is going to be important. And also, if you think of some of the top entrepreneurs at the moment that we can know of and we can name, they have a personal brand. They are currently creating content, and I think what's also important to mention is they have a team of people around them helping them to create that content. And so do make sure you're aware of that when you're comparing yourself to other creators and other brands. You might not have exactly the same resources. That's something important to keep in the back of your head. But in terms of the separation element, I always like to think about commercial content versus artistic content. And there is this real shift now, especially with AI coming in, around content that is simply for educational purposes or entertainment purposes, and content which is really about self-expression. And they're two different things. So a good way of thinking about it is, yes, you want your brand to be authentic and you want it to come from you, but it can be a persona of you which you've crafted to be most resonant with the audience you are trying to speak to. You don't need to give all of yourself. You just need to give the one slice which is going to most resonate with the people you want to speak to. And I find that where you hit a lot of the different elements. You've got a commercial approach because you understand, right, here is my audience. I'm meeting them where they're at. I'm resonating with them. But hopefully your content is then converting into either purchases or you're changing your audience's behavior. So you've hit commercial, you've hit authentic, you've also hit the fact that it's converting. But you've also got that element of knowing this isn't all of me. And so you've also hit that separation element as well. And I suppose one thing I will add on to that at the end is that if there is content that you want to create from a more artistic lens, which is more expressive for you personally, then that's brilliant. That doesn't necessarily have to be tied to your brand. You can have that in a different space.
But requires a bit of separation. Right? I can't have let's say me with my training company brand talking about products and some of the work that I'm doing, and then having necessarily streams of me down the beach on a Sunday. We're confusing my audience if I'm mixing those two things, right?
Yeah, and I think a good place to look at this is, funny enough, LinkedIn. I think a lot of LinkedIn personal brands now are trying to do the more personable approach and be like, look, I've gone to the beach, or it was my daughter's graduation, or something along those lines. And they've tried to pull it in somehow to a business lesson or something that's going to impact their audience. I'd say actually sometimes that stuff can be kept for family gold, and that can just be kept for your weekend, and you can keep that separate. You don't need to be living your life online in the way that some others do. Again, that's just a personal preference for myself. And you've got to think, when you're creating content, how is this going to be of value to my audience? Is it of value to my audience to see my daughter graduate? And I think coming at it from that perspective as well kind of gives you that separation point as well.
Yeah. Lucy agrees, by the way. This is so true. I usually use a collective voice for my brand, tends to be more professional. And then under my personal brand as a CEO founder, it's more conversational, and personalized. And I agree. And LinkedIn, was that professional platform. And it has become a little bit more like Facebook. I'm not going to sit here and whinge and moan, because we're streaming out on LinkedIn, of course. And we're streaming out on Facebook because different audiences in different places. But yeah, I totally agree with what you see. You just said, I see people on LinkedIn putting content out there about something that's very personal to them and trying to link it back to something in their business. And people do buy people, but where is that divide? Where is that line in the sand? Where do we cross it? How far should we go before we share too much of our personal life? I think Richard Branson is a very good example, certainly in his earlier days, where he took on various challenges and he was the face of the business, and still is today. We know Richard Branson, Virgin. Just like, agree or disagree, we know Elon Musk from a Tesla point of view or a SpaceX point of view. These big entrepreneurs tend to be the front of their brand, but we don't really see their personal life unless the media gets hold of it, of course. That's very different. So segregation, I think, is important. But Nick, I'd like to see you on the beach walking down there in your Speedos. I mean, that would give us a different outlook on life, of course.
Nobody wants to see me in my Speedos, mate. That's a global thing that we can agree on. I think it's a real struggle, right? Because there is a real blurring because everything we can put out is so prevalent. There's so many channels for us potentially to communicate across. And if we're a business, do we in theory choose a particular channel, right? Everything I'm going to do for my business is on LinkedIn. Everything I'm going to do for say non-business, I'll put on Facebook. But then, as you said, we're streaming on both. So there was a blurring. And I think as a leader, as a business, I think it's a challenge of where you position yourself. And I guess, Lucy, this kind of becomes part of the narrative and the story that the business tells. And I know a big part of the branding is the storytelling. I want to unpick that a little bit to find out what exactly you mean by that. Storytelling versus authenticity. I'm a big fan of storytelling. What do you exactly mean by that from a leadership point of view?
Sorry, in terms of storytelling, authentic storytelling versus inauthentic storytelling.
No. Just from here's a business, here's my brand, and you will help me and my brand and business tell the story of who we are and what we have to offer. Yes.
So I think an easy way to get into this is understanding what a brand is not. And I think a lot of people misconstrued what brand is. They think, firstly, just by association, they think logos, colors, imagery, graphics, things along those lines, things you can see, the visible parts of a brand. And that's very much tip of the iceberg, which is a very common understanding and metaphor in the branding space, because underneath all of that, underneath the surface, is a whole brand strategy, which includes brand story, understanding of your audience, competitive analysis and research, and all of this other stuff which builds out actually your brand. And it's the invisible stuff. I like to say that brand is the emotional impact of your content. It's how do people feel afterwards, and that's a really important part of story. There's some data that came out a few years ago. I forget the exact numbers, but long story short, if you tell a story which is emotional, then people are far more likely to remember it, which is exactly what we want from any sort of marketing and advertising, relative to if it's a completely just descriptive and non-emotional story, then people are far less likely to remember it, which is what we don't want. So very much when it comes to brand, be thinking, what is the emotional impact that I want to have for my audience? And then story runs into that.
You're absolutely resonating with me, because I'm a massive fan of storytelling and absolutely appreciate that. If you want someone to do something, then there needs to be some sort of emotion. People won't act if they don't care, and somehow
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go for it.
There's an interesting idea, which is People, what's the saying? People think rationally, but they buy emotionally. And it's that idea. And an awful lot of purchases now are impulse buys. And it's because you've tapped into an emotion and they want to basically buy into that emotion. And it's those sorts of ideas. So when you're thinking about your sales page, do you really want to lead with all of the product features? For example, if your iPhone or your phone, generally speaking, I was trying to find mine to put up as an example. When you're going onto the Apple website, are you there reading all of the different specs around the camera and the screen? Or have you bought into the creativity and the storytelling that Apple is so amazing at, and saying that this camera, basically you're buying that identity and you're buying the access to that creativity. You're not buying 3 cameras of certain specs. I don't even know the specs, to be honest. So it's that sort of idea.
Yeah. As an Apple fanboy, I buy into the Apple ecosystem and their branding and their marketing and what they stand for and stuff like that. But I will say, being a technologist, I do look at the specs as well. But that comes after I've been kind of drawn into the, you know, to what they offer and stuff like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about marketing? I think it's a really interesting area, something that we could probably spend days unpicking. But business is competitive out there now. There's lots of businesses doing very similar things. There's not much uniqueness. I've got a product that no one else has got. There's always going to be potentially competition out there. How can people stand out from the crowd? And AI is playing a big part. You mentioned it earlier. I don't want to jump on the AI bandwagon. It's discussed everywhere and all day, every day at the moment. But I think it's an important factor. But this guerrilla marketing type stuff, startup business on their journey to success, fingers crossed, what can they do to be a little bit different to their competitors? What would you advise a startup business, and I know it's product or service related, depending on what they do offer, but what would you say to them? What would you say about standing out, their USP, being different, being seen and being heard?
So it's funny because I've been battling around this idea the last couple of days. And I know you don't want to go into AI, but I genuinely think the best opportunity at the moment in marketing to be able to stand out and to be able to get new business is through GEO, which for anyone who doesn't know, that's generative engine optimization. And I don't think it's spoken about enough yet. And I think if you get early on the bandwagon, you're going to be at the front of the queue effectively. So not speaking about AI, pausing that and putting that to the side for 1 second. Yes, you've got to be a bit careful now with brand and vision and mission, because I think a lot of companies are now doing it in a way where it feels gimmicky. And I don't know if other people have picked up on this at all, especially in the B2C space more. But it's like every single brand seems to be telling this big story now. And they have this massive vision statement and mission statement. And then you're like, how genuine is this? Or have you just done this because you know that storytelling is what's it? And I think maybe it's because I'm from a marketing background, and so I can see it and I'm a bit more skeptical to it and maybe see through it. But I would really say, if you are going to have a clear vision, a clear mission, a clear value statement, things like that, really do make sure it's authentic and back it up. I think some really good examples is, for example, Newman's Own, the salad dressing. If my research is correct, then 100% of their profits go to charity, and yet none of us know that. That is having a vision statement and a mission statement that people can get behind, but they're not using it as a marketing ploy. And there's more companies like that out there in the world, which we just don't know about. So if you are going to have a vision and mission statement and you are going to use it for marketing, make sure you're backing it up with actions. Is a really important part of that kind of ecosystem. In terms of the guerrilla marketing strategy, again, I wouldn't just use it because other people are using it. So really look at what is the impact that you want to make. Is guerrilla marketing the best option? I'm currently working with a brand new startup. I'm talking completely fresh as in the last couple of months. And we're going straight from the beginning in terms of their marketing. And we are focusing on a geo SEO based strategy. PR, I think, is something which is going to be very important moving forward, because PR gives you backlinks. Backlinks is credibility and authority from a technical perspective, which is going to boost your SEO and your GEO, which is going to improve your AI possibility. And considering the majority of people in the buying process now are going straight to ChatGPT and other chatbots and basically saying, hey, I've got this problem, help me diagnose it, and then can you give me solutions? GEO is going to be majorly important in marketing moving forward. So if you want to do guerrilla marketing, go for it, but really is that really where we want to be putting our money if we are a small startup with a minimal budget? Is that where we're going to get the biggest impact? And I would argue you won't, most likely in the current market space and with where the market's moving as well. So I would genuinely look more to SEO, GEO and the alike first, and then see if there's something else that you want to do, again, for fun. Because another thing about marketing is you do want to enjoy it, especially if you're one of those smaller teams and it's like, oh, I have to do the marketing now. If there is something fun that you want to give yourself at the end of the year, being like, oh, we're going to do a marketing event, then again, I completely do back that idea as well. It's not always about strategy and what's going to, you can have some fun with it as well. So on the smaller scale. So yeah, I know I've kind of rambled a little bit there, but those are some important ideas, I think, about the future of where marketing is going and where you should be kind of focusing right now.
There's a lot of information in that segment, Lucy. I'd like to just clarify a few things on behalf of our audience, because we used GEO, we used SEO, we used PR, and we kept bandying around this term guerrilla, which all sounds a lot of fun. Can we
what do they mean?
Well, yeah, and can because you said your own admission that generative engine optimization, if you're not on it, you crack on, because early adopters are going to benefit. Would you indulge us a little bit and just tell what on earth is that? Because I'm starting to feel a little bit old. I'm missing the boat here. David probably isn't, but I am. What is GEO and some of the other stuff?
Okay, so guerrilla marketing is basically surprise marketing in the best way. So if you see a flash mob in the middle of Times Square, that would be a guerrilla campaign. Or maybe you're a musician and then you do a pop-up show in the middle of a supermarket or something like that. And then typically with these sorts of campaigns, there's a lot of social content that's created as well. There's normally a bit of a hype and a bit of a buzz. Maybe you give a bit of a countdown, be like, oh, where are we going to be next type thing. They are really fun, but they're very much, they're less of a long-term strategy, and they're more kind of when you want a burst of excitement. So typically around a launch event or something along those lines. PR, that's public relations. So this is to do with media connections, getting into magazines, and news articles, and working with journalists and things like that. Again, it provides an awful lot of credibility to your brand and also to the business as well. Can bring in some new leads. What's really great about PR as well from that perspective is the backlinks. And this moves into SEO and to GEO. So I'll start with SEO, which is far more well known. This is search engine optimization. How do you get to the top #1 spot on Google based on important search terms for your industry? So say you're a baker in Cambridge, where I'm based, and someone's searching local bakeries near me in Cambridge. You want to be the #1 bakery that comes up. So SEO is how do you go about that? And it's all to do with selecting keywords, in this case, bakery, Cambridge, local, something on those lines, and baking that into your website, into what we call H1 tags, heading tags. So these will be the top titles for the page, but also embedding it into the body of the content. And importantly, especially for GEO, when we're getting a little bit more sophisticated, into schema. So what this is looking at the technical coding side of things on the back end of the website. So people who view the website won't be able to see this information, but it tells the search engines, right, this is a bakery in Cambridge, it's local, And so when Google go and search your website, they'll see that information, be like, local Cambridge bakery, this is the site that you want to go to, which is brilliant. Backlinks is what provides Google credibility. Basically says this website's really credible. So again, taking this bakery example, say you've recently launched and you've done a PR campaign, all of the local Cambridge news articles then write an article about you, say, look at this amazing new bakery in Cambridge, and they link to your website from their website. Now, typically these media publications will have greater credibility already because they would have been more historic, they've got a lot of content going out, and they've also got their own backlinks as well. And so what you do is, as a new business, you end up basically stealing a little bit of their credibility. And Google thinks, this company is actually really credible because all of these other credible websites are linking to them. And Google really likes that because Google wants to recommend the best option for any search term that comes up. It's what makes them competitive against Bing or other search engines. So Google, you type in bakeries in Cambridge, says, right, well, I've got this website, which is saying it's a bakery in Cambridge, and it's being linked to by all of these really credible websites. That's probably the most credible local bakery in Cambridge. That's the option that I'm going to feed my audience. And so that's really how you get to the top of search engines. The new development is this GEO, which is generative engine optimization, which is how do you get to the top of AI, basically. And this is really important because people's buyer's journey, or the behavior people or your audience, your customers engage in when they go to find solutions and go to find things to buy, is changing. Before, we would go to Google and we would say, find me bakeries in Cambridge. Now we're moving to chatbots and we're saying, hey, find me local bakeries in Cambridge. Or it could be a lot of different other search terms, but generally speaking, where we go first is to AI. Most notably ChatGPT, but we're also going to the others as well. So how do we get ChatGPT to tell our audience that we exist when a relevant search is made? And it's very similar to SEO. There's not much different. There is a couple of different nuances. There's more of a focus on the technical side of things, but also pillar pages are really relevant. PR, backlinks, also really relevant. And if anything, it's just saying SEO, GEO, that is really where you want to be focusing your energy currently to really get ahead of other companies, basically.
Yeah. It is so interesting, and the clock is ticking, so we're gonna run out of time before we can really dive. We're gonna have to do another conversation with you, Lucy, because I would love to unpick this. But I was reading an article the other day. 70% of internet users, so those that will use search, be it Google, Bing, whatever platform, 70% of users now are using AI chatbots. So again, it might be ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, whatever that might look like. And 25% of those users are now using chat LMs to basically do their search. So they're moving away from Google. And this is such an interesting thing because it's talking about this SEO, and Google they've already hit a brick wall. They've put their hands up and they've said, we're losing people. And the problem Google have got is that people pay to advertise through their pay-per-click. And of course, they're not getting as much pay-per-click traffic. So Google have got this hole that they don't know quite what to do at the moment. I think they shot themselves in the foot because when you search on Google, what comes at the top? It's the Google AI Gemini response above all their paid listings. So it's very interesting. And then I read other articles and speak to other experts. SEO is something that's going to be dead in the not too distant future, along potentially with websites, the way we utilize and use websites in the future, which is, of course, this whole, will jobs losses come because of AI, people not developing websites because AI can do it. There's such a big piece to unpick here. But this GEO piece is very interesting. And one of the top tips that, again, I've been fed by the experts is using things like FAQs. So creating FAQs on your website that basically the search side from language models love FAQs. They're on your website. No one's probably ever going to click and read them. A bit like SEO, when you create a blog, no one reads blogs anymore, but of course Google does. And one of the things they're saying is create these FAQs. They're really good to get optimization from a language model. We're in a world that's moving so fast. Technology, the way we market our business, the way we do strategy, even down to the fine detail around leadership, which is, one of the things that we're talking about today. It's a changed world, and it's going to keep changing day by day by day. So I've got one final question for you, and then I'm going to let Nick pick on his final question to wrap us up for today. But I always like to ask our guests, if you could give one piece of single advice, a top tip, a key takeaway, what would that be? One thing. I mean, you might have 101 things you'd love to share, but what would be
and
your
the rest?
and the rest? What would be one of your top tips? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but what would one of those top tips be?
So actually, this is something which another business strategist who I recommend talks about. Her name's Alice Benham, and she says take messy action. It's very easy with strategy and leadership to get caught up and overwhelmed, and all of a sudden, what's this? Now I've got to go and do all of the research into this, and it's like, and I completely take that. So one advice which I've taken and I've listened to, which is just take messy action. 85% is good enough. Launch on 85%, and things like that. So yeah, feedback is more important than anything else. So yeah, okay, we can sit here, we can talk strategy, planning, we can create the perfect plan, but the most important thing is you act. So take messy action is probably one of the most important things, I'd say.
I love that. I'm not a big fan of move fast and break things, but take messy action. I'd much prefer that because I've suffered from it in the past. You launch a business, you want everything to be perfect, and you waste so much time procrastinating or this or that without just getting. There's no room for that anymore, is there? There might have been back in the day, but now just get on with it, get it out there, and your audience will soon tell you whether they like it or they don't like it.
Exactly.
So my final question to you, Lucy, thank you ever so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. I'm with David. Let's have another one of these conversations at some point in the future. So what's next for Lucy? What's keeping you busy, and what can you offer for our lovely audience?
Yeah, so well, first things first, I mean, my LinkedIn is in my name tag there, so please do just connect with me. I do introduction calls all the time, completely free. It's about 20-30 minutes, so jump on there. I do have a bit of a pre-questionnaire before you jump on that call, and then hopefully I can give you as much advice as I possibly can in 20-30 minutes just to get you on your way. So please do jump on that if you have any kind of personalized advice that you'd like. In terms of what I'm doing and where I'm at the moment, so very much focused on go-to-market strategy, helping companies either get up and running or really scale in the next couple of years, which is exciting. But I'm putting more of a focus into creative direction, creative strategy. And this is the storytelling element, which I mentioned, which is so important. So it's a mixture of what do we do and how are we doing it, as well as what's the story that we're telling. So it's a nice mix of it all.
Wow. Lucy, it's been fabulous. 45 minutes is never enough time to have a really in-depth conversation and learn more. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Of course, if you do want to get in touch with Lucy, her LinkedIn is on the screen there. It's Lucy Colson. Go on, search, find, connect. Look, a valuable resource. Have a one-to-one with Lucy on one of her exploratory calls. I guarantee you it'll be well worthwhile just by the conversation we've had here this afternoon. Lucy, once again, thank you very much for being here. Nick, as always, thank you, my friend, for being by my side and keeping our conversation fun and energetic as always. So thank you very much. And of course, thank you to all our listeners, viewers out there joining us today. We're back next month with another exciting conversation. Until then, it's bye-bye from me.
Cheerio
My
from
pleasure.
me.
Thank you so much, everyone.